There we go. Boom. We're up and live. There we go. Hey, welcome to another day. Yes, it is December 20th. December 20th is when we are broadcasting from. So the question is guests. We talk about guests. I am going to be having guests on again, going back into the new year. Looking forward to that. But we talk about what kind of guests to have on a show. The question is, who are you? That would be the first thing, right? So in my case, I'm looking to interview people advancing through obstacles. So I'm looking to share the stories of others. I'm not looking to become the expert. I'm looking to share those stories outward for you to understand that there's a multitude of different things that we go through, some self-inflicted, some not, whatever. So those challenges that we go through in order to achieve something maybe we never would have achieved. Doug, good afternoon to you. You happen to be one of them. You had a few different obstacles that have been put in front of you and gone on to create different things. Doug would be a perfect guest. So Doug, starting next year, love to have you on one of these days. But if you're hosting your own show and you want to be seen as the expert or an expert in an industry, or now you got to really take a look at the kind of guests that you're having on or not. So a lot of these podcasts that take place, or vodcasts that take place, people are teaching something. You're now an expert. You're portraying yourself as somebody who teaches other people. So you have the expertise in, let's just say, digital marketing, right? You have the expertise in digital marketing. So what kind of a guest can you have on? So if you have on somebody that is also an expert in digital marketing, and you can use that term as a generic term, now you become it becomes a bit of a challenge, doesn't it? So how can you ask that person a question? All right. If I say I'm an expert in hosting vodcasts, and I have somebody else that's also hosting vodcasts, and I ask them for their opinion on something, what do I do if I'm saying, oh, I know it all? How can I ask a question? You can't. It's awkward doing that. And then they're going to give a response. And then then your response is, do you agree with it or disagree with it? If you agree with the way they do something and it's different than the way you do something, but you're the expert, you've got all the answers, you're no longer the expert. You're not portraying yourself. You're not going to be seen that way because you're now taking the advice of somebody else. So it diminishes your quote unquote as the expert in something. So be careful if you're going to be doing that, if you're going to be the expert host. Now, if you have expertise within an industry, now we got something a little bit different there. So remember, are you an expert or you have expertise in an industry? Think about that one for a second. I'm going to drink coffee. So let's assume I have expertise in an industry. Again, we'll use vodcasting as the industry. So I have expertise in it. So I have expertise in my way of doing something. This is how I approach it. You might approach it slightly differently. I'm sure you do. We're all different people. Different people do different things differently in order to perhaps achieve the same goal. We all want to help somebody. We all want to increase the amount of people that watch these programs and stuff like that. All right, but we all want to help somebody. I guess that we'll say that's the common one over there. So now if I have expertise in hosting a show, I have my approach to doing it. What is my approach to doing it? It comes to, a guest. Well, that is that like to get everybody comfortable. She would chat, for a few minutes in advance, and a couple of easy kind of things. Get to know everybody, come up with a nice little intro, and make it happen. Other folks that have expertise in hosting a vodcast or a podcast, same kind of thing. They want to tell motivational stories. Well, they might just go right at it, right at it. What was your problem? What did you overcome? How did you wind up in that situation? Be a bit more abrupt with it. Okay, that's their approach. And others would like to do that pre-interview. Have a pre-interview, a hour-long interview in front of a half an hour show to make sure they have everything. Others might like to have an intake sheet that is, let me rephrase, an intake sheet is a good idea. How to pronounce your name, what the website is, stuff like that. That I think everybody should do across the board. But an intake set of questions, some do, some don't. Like when I was interviewing people, I wanted to know what your end goal was. What was the message you wanted to deliver? I knew why I was having somebody on, but I wanted to know what that end goal was. Maybe you're hosting something and you have your own message that you want to deliver out, and you want to make sure that the guest fully understands the message that you're trying to deliver through their story, and you're going to work it through that way, and you want to know what they're going to be talking about. Okay, different. So you might have a whole intake form, not just a sheet, but a whole form. Is one way better than the other? Not necessarily. So that expertise in an industry, I would tend to say, actually I'm going to say, it's not I'm going to tend to say it, I will say it, is that we all have different styles on interviewing. I've sat down with many people on that. And I'm talking just interviewing live to tape, or just live to tape. There's no editing involved over here. Forget about the editing. That's a whole different thing. But that live to tape or just flat out live interviews, some folks are much, much more comfortable having a lot of that structured out in advance. This way they know where it's going. Makes the host more comfortable, or it makes the host a bit more knowledgeable and gives the host a lot more direction. Maybe it also helps the host really come up with much more finite kind of questions. Think about that. So if I interview somebody and I don't formally prepare for that. In other words, I get an intake sheet. Intake sheet, your name, phone number, email, web address, some of the backstory, what your tagline is, or what your message is, and I just leave it like that. And you as a guest should know that you're going on a program where, advancing through obstacles and pretty much delivers the message as to what we're talking about over here. So some questions going to be in line with that whole thing. So now, and then the questions are just more flow of thought, just letting it just naturally progress, mostly naturally progress. Because if I'm interviewing somebody, I know what direction I want to take it in. Might have some surprises along the way, but still I pretty much know the direction we're going to go in. But I'm looking for the guest to talk more freely, that kind of thing. Not have prepared answers, but more freely. But the more questions you give to somebody, the more they may prepare those answers. So that's why I like the idea of be more free-flowing, that train of thought type thing. Yet, if you go the other way around and you do a full form where you're asking, let's say 10 questions, you're giving your intake form to your potential guest is 10 questions going out. They answer all those questions. They comes back to you. Okay, we got a couple of different advantages with that one too. One is that if your guest is taking the time to fill out that entire form, they're very serious about it. That's good. On the other hand, I give somebody a call, said, hey, how would you like to be on? They say yes. They come down there, might be totally unprepared, might be, not have full answers. I wind up taking a chance with that one. If you're filling out that form completely and giving full responses to it, well, now you as the host know that the person is serious about what they do, direction it's going to go in, and you're good in that respect. There's a difference between expertise in an industry and being an expert in it. If I'm going to tell you I'm an expert in it, I'm going to tell you exactly how to do it. My expertise, my way of looking at it is going to be different than yours. So therein lies the difference. That's it. I think the big difference with that. But just to finish that point, though, but if you're going to have somebody on that where you've done the full interview and that whole thing coming back, the advantage with you doing that, besides the fact that you now have all these questions out there, you know exactly what you have. You don't have to worry about, filling airtime. What if I don't know what to say? What if I've got 10 minutes left and I got nothing no questions that I know to ask? Well, you always have those questions you can fall back on. I take the chance of not having something to say. I take the chance of a guest becoming a very quiet guest, and that becomes an issue. You're filling out those questions, you get that back. You now have a chance to find out a bit more about the guest. You also have a chance to go a little bit deeper into those questions than perhaps I'd be able to do. If the person responds back that they've started schools in Africa, and I'm finding that out for the first time, questions is like, how did you get the financing for it? Who are your partners? How many schools, students, success that you have from it? If you know that in advance, you now could ask questions a bit more specific that you'd be able to prepare. I don't know, curriculum you could ask, because you could spit out, I know that you have 10 different schools within the various community. You've gotten finance from some major corporations, which is all great stuff, by the way. There's somebody that comes to mind that actually did this, but you've gotten financing from the major corporations, stuff like that. Tell me about Mary, who's achieved greater success. I wouldn't know Mary's name if I'm just finding about this stuff, for the very first time. Which is a better style? Tell me, what are you trying to accomplish? If you want to be that in-depth, hard-hitting interviewer, maybe the full intake form would be the way to go. If you want to look at I find the message to be more important than some of those little intricate details, and I'd rather have that, let's say, raw enthusiasm. So I go that way. So really pay attention to that whole thing. Whether or not you are an expert, it's all about me, I have all the answers, or if you're sharing your expertise with your guests. Now, another thing to do, if you want to share your expertise with people, now you can take a look at the topic. Let's go with the topic of, digital marketing. Is there one way or marketing? Is there one way to market something? Absolutely not. So maybe your expertise is more in the digital marketing world, but you want to bring somebody else on that's also in the marketing world. Now, all of a sudden, you're sharing your expertise within an industry, that digital marketing, but you're staying an expert. You're going to position yourself here where you're still staying an expert in digital marketing, which means you will probably not, or you will not have anybody else on that is in your space, your finite space, that small space of a digital marketer. You might have somebody on that does marketing through podcast. You might have somebody on that does marketing through regular TV shows or through newspaper ads, anything like that, to talk about the differences there and to share different thoughts with your audience, what might be appropriate for them, what might not be, but you're still keeping yourself in that expert category as a digital marketer and a full understanding of an industry, which I actually think is really terrific. Because look, if I'm coming to you as a client, I'll say, all right, it's Brian, I got the radio show, the podcasting, that we're doing over here. I need to market it more. And you're telling me digital marketing is the greatest thing in the world. It's the only way to go and stuff like that. I said, yeah, but more along the lines of focused on Long Island with different topics and stuff like that. Don't you think a newspaper would make sense? And you as a digital marketing person say, you don't know anything about newspaper ads? It's like, really? So how could you tell me that yours is better than your approach is better than their approach if you don't even know what their approach is? You can't do that. You just can't do that. You lose all kinds of credibility if you do something like that. So don't do that. So keep that in mind. You want to be able to have, as I like to say, that first level conversation about anything that's surrounding your topic, and then you could be a coach and get hired by different people to do things. Look at your vodcast or podcast as the same kind of thing. When you're hosting something, you want to host, you want your show to portray you from, if you're doing it for business purposes, you want that show to really truly portray you in the same way that you would portray you if I sat down across the table from you and say, look, hey, I got this project I'm working on. I want to expand it. Let's talk about marketing. What are the different marketing ideas, solutions, and stuff like that? Well, if you're doing a podcast on that category, now I can listen to your podcast. Now, when I sit down with you, I have a very, very good understanding of who you are. If you tell me you're an expert in absolutely everything, chances are I'm not sitting down with you because you're not. How many people could really say they're an expert in everything within an industry? I don't think so. We surround ourselves with a lot of people that have various levels of expertise in different facets of whatever industry that we're in. That's really what makes it work. That becomes a really super important thing to do. Let your show portray that one as that goes. All right, so you have that. Let's talk about editing. The wonderful world of editing. Let's talk about bringing that microphone a little bit closer too. And I still got to talk to our friends over there at StreamYard because I got so much white over here. I want to make this thing a little bit bigger and get rid of all that white background. That would help out quite a bit over here. All right, so what about editing? So if I do this podcast and edit, right, I go for about a half hour each and every time. So be it. Too short? Too long? Well, I don't think it's too short. Is it too long? Well, some people say the attention span is a lot less than 30 minutes. So yeah, probably could be shorter. Could I get the same amount of information out in 15 minutes? Probably. If I'm speaking by myself, most definitely can. If I have a guest on, that becomes a little bit more challenging because there's the intro, the outro, that kind of thing. It's leading up to a question. It takes a little bit more time. If you're editing, that changes things around quite a bit. If you are editing a program, let's assume, and there's a few people that do they do their vodcasts and then they edit it down to a shorter length. So they have the raw one live and then they edit it down to something, or maybe they edit it down to do a podcast or to a podcast with it and doing it that way. Okay. So can you do that? Yes, that definitely takes on another level of effort, or it takes on another level of money. Going back to the monetary side of this thing. Right? You want to do this, you want to have some video that you could put up on your website. This is super easy to do. All you do is turn it on. You don't even need to use StreamYard or any of those things, right? You turn on your computer, you do yourself a Facebook Live, something like that. Zoom or StreamYard, if you're going to have guests, one of those things, cost you virtually no money, a couple of lights, and even that you probably don't even need altogether too much with that one either. Okay, easy enough to do. The video goes up on your website. Again, you can download it, make sure it gets over to YouTube. It's easy to share from YouTube. Easy to do. I figured it out. It's not that hard. And there you have it there. Now, but if it's long and you really want to get out those salient points, now you're talking about editing. So if you have a guest on, you could do the full half hour or thereabouts, but that half hour show and then edit out different pieces of it. It's great to do. Can you do it alone? Yep, you certainly can. The equipment, you probably have all the equipment and power or whatever you need here, computing power you need inside of your computer to do it that way. A lot of the programs I think are like either inexpensive or probably even free. I am not an expert in that area. Let us be perfectly clear about that. But I'm sure we can get information, on that. Then you could edit out different clips. I think even YouTube, you could just edit, right on there. I think StreamYard also has some sort of a feature in there where you could record it and then edit it from that aspect of it. Now all of a sudden, you got this idea that you could do a promo video in front of, hey, next week's guest is going to be. That's a good thing. Or you could take that half-hour interview and you could bring it down to 15 minutes. Now, if you do a 15-minute piece that's edited, you're going to have just the real good points. Now, all of a sudden, your questions that you ask could be a little bit different too, because you want to make sure that you have 3, 4, 5, let's say 15-minute show, let's say 5 real good questions that you are all set to ask. And then your lead-up questions, though, should really set up your guest to be able to go into them at various levels of detail, but to really have that mindset, that where you're going to steer them in the right direction, where they're going to come out with the answer that you're looking for, from them to share and do that. That's a different world. That is a different one. I have not done it where I have edited like that, but it would be interesting because if you do a half hour worth of really good content and then you try editing, I don't know if I want to cut that. I was like, that's not really it. You got to focus it down, really understand how much time you have of your edited one and how many real good questions and how many real good responses can you get in that amount of time. And if 15 minutes, you did 5 questions, it takes you 30 seconds or something like that to ask the question. And then they respond for 1 or 2 minutes. Do the math. You're in there with the whole show. But you also have to make sure that your intro, not your standard intro, today is Tomato Talk, but I'm talking your intro of the guest. That also has to be done properly and completely, because now you have a very pointed direction that you want to take that show. And perhaps if you're good, you can even edit that in afterwards. And just be careful it doesn't get a little too canned. But, you can do that. It's a different skill set. All these things are different skill sets. So if I'm going to have guests on, right, and I want to share my expertise within an industry, and my way of doing something could be totally different from your way of doing something if you have an edited show, or if you're doing prepared questions, or if you're not doing prepared questions, if your goal is to make you look good as host, or maybe your goal is to make your guest look good and really highlight them, and you're taking more of a backseat. You're just let's say, a conduit of it. In the past, and actually going forward, I'm looking to do that same thing. I'm looking to be more the conduit of it. In other words, I want to get that message out, is that regardless of the obstacles that we face, we do advance. We do move forward, or we can at least move forward. I know it's never going to be 100%. That's the reality side of things. We get faced with some obstacles, and some obstacles we just can't get through. Other obstacles we can get through. Well, the idea here between this show, is to share those obstacles that people have learned from and have advanced from and have grown from. And that's the kind of guest that I want to have on. So in my way of thinking as host, it really is all about the guest. It's not about me. I have the right guest. It's about choosing the right guest. That becomes important. But if I have the right guests on, they're going to be delivering my message through their story. So the more I can help them tell their story, the more that delivers my message. That becomes a win. That's really where the focus is over here. That's the way it's going to be on this side. If you've got a business, so no, I'm not promoting this as a business. I'm sharing this or doing this more as a way of delivering a message. It's really it. It's a way of delivering a message. But if I was doing this as a business where I wanted to help you do a podcast, well, I guess that would be today's thing. But if I wanted to help you do a podcast, give you the confidence where you can go out there and do a podcast or a vodcast or whatever, that kind of thing. Well, now I'm going to put myself in there a bit more of a teacher, right? Where I'm sharing my thoughts, I'm giving instructions. Then I'm going to have on other people that will also give instructions, not just telling their story for the sake of telling their story about how they've grown as a person, but those actionable thoughts, those actionable ideas that you could use to help your own program out, help your own business out as that goes. And those folks will be there because anybody that's advanced through an obstacle will cover a wide variety of different obstacles. But we're not going to be just focused in on podcasting obstacles as that goes. Much more broad scope in that respect. Because I definitely want to get the message out for you, for me, for all of us, is that sometimes life is filled with challenges. Sometimes they just tough, just really tough to get through. But we're never alone in what we do, no matter what it is. No matter what it is, we're never alone in what we do. We always have other people that we can rely on, other people that we could talk to, other people that we could be with, other people that have experienced some of the same things that we have. We've all experienced our story, our way. It is unique to us. Nobody that has your story. You are the only one that has your story. The similarities with other stories, the similarities that other people have dealt with as they've gone through their obstacles, that might be something there. It's like, and if I do this right, I'll be able to show through those stories is, oh, you know what? I've been having a problem with marketing. Keep going back to marketing here, but I've been having a problem with marketing, and wow, that person's in the business and they did too. And this is what they did. Maybe I could adapt that. Maybe I should speak to that person too. One guy that comes to mind on that one. Love the fact he was doing his own marketing. It was a marketing company, and he wanted to help streamline his process. And he did that and wound up developing a product out of it. Great stuff. Other folks been through different obstacles in life, big challenges. They've worked their way through it. Maybe they found new careers because of it. Maybe they found a career, not because of it. It just led them in a direction. And I know you've seen a lot of those stories up on Facebook and LinkedIn, wherever else. It's like, oh yeah, my family member, my friend went through this thing, and that's why I became a specialist. That's why I became a doctor. That's why I became whatever it is. Those are terrible scenarios, great stories. Because people have done something with it. And they've done something to help us all improve in some respect. And that's definitely a nice thing to do. Look at this COVID, working from home, if you've been able to do that, or if you've been going out and you have to go someplace to work or an office environment and things like that. You know, it's been tough. New variant coming through over here. New possible, probable, different kind of lockdowns, wearing the mask again. It's like, wow, it's, it's a challenge. It definitely is a challenge. We're going to work through it. Yeah, that's one of those obstacles we're going to work through. We'll work through it. We'll get through this one. We'll get through other things that'll come up. And the best way that we could get through all of these things, if we all start communicating with each other. Maybe we all start sharing our stories just a little bit more. Maybe we all start rowing that boat in the same direction, even if we are on different boats that are all unique to our own. The obstacles we face, totally yours. Nobody else's but you. But there's a lot of people that care. That's what we're going to get point across with, doing that whole thing. And when you do your show, understand what it is that you're really trying to deliver. Understand that message that you're really trying to get out of there. Understand what you're really looking for out of it. And you'll do a great job hosting your own podcast, TV show, whatever it might be. Getting on stage in front of real people, live, in person, doing whatever it is that you do in order for you to communicate better and to communicate effectively. You got to know who your audience is. You got to know why you're doing what you're doing. And then your audience will become much clearer as you go along. And that will also help you devise a perfect way for you to grow. And don't worry if you run into a problem. We all learn from different obstacles, don't we? That is how we advance. Speak well, speak often, and without a doubt, live inspired.